Alright, I'm about to share something that's going to trigger a lot of people, especially women, and I honestly don't care because I've discovered a psychological strategy that has completely eliminated arguments from my relationships, and it's based on understanding female psychology in a way that most men never figure out. Here's my track record. I haven't had a real fight with a woman in over 3 years. Not my girlfriend, not female friends, not even difficult women at work. And before you think I'm some pushover who just agrees with everything, let me be clear, I still set boundaries, I still disagree when necessary, and I still call out bad behaviour, but I do it in a way that makes women want to cooperate with me instead of fight me. Most dating coaches will tell you that conflict is inevitable, that you need to hold frame and be dominant, or that women just love drama and there's nothing you can do about it. But I've discovered something that completely flips this conventional wisdom on its head, and it's based on understanding a fundamental principle about feminine psychology that most men are completely blind to. You probably want to know what that principle is. Well, I've identified 3 critical mistakes that men make that actually create conflict with women, and I'm not just going to leave you hanging there. I'm going to show you exactly why women react the way they do to male communication, how to speak to women in a way that bypasses their defensive mechanisms entirely, and most importantly, how to get women to actually enjoy being corrected by you. Because here's the thing, when you understand how women process emotional information differently than men, you'll realize that most arguments aren't about the topic you think you're arguing about. They're about something much deeper, and once you learn to address that deeper thing, women become remarkably cooperative. So let's start with the first mistake, and this one's going to completely change how you think about male-female communication. But first, let me share a statistic that might surprise you. Research shows that women are significantly more sensitive to vocal tone and emotional subtext than men. They literally hear things in your voice that you don't even know you're communicating. This isn't just about avoiding arguments. This is about understanding how to influence women positively, how to build relationships where women genuinely want to please you, and how to navigate the modern dating landscape where one wrong tone can end everything. Master this, and you'll have a superpower that most men never develop. Ignore it, and you'll keep wondering why women seem so difficult and emotional in your relationships. The first mistake men make is not understanding that women don't just hear your words, they absorb and amplify your emotional state, then reflect it back to you with interest. Think about the last argument you had with a woman. I guarantee it probably started small, maybe a minor disagreement, a slightly irritated tone, or a tiny hint of frustration in your voice. But somehow, within minutes, it escalated into something much bigger than the original issue warranted. Most men walk away from these situations thinking, she's crazy. How did such a small thing turn into World War III? But what they don't understand is that they're witnessing a fundamental principle of feminine psychology in action, what I call the amplification principle. Here's how it works. Women are biologically wired to be emotional amplifiers. Give them a tiny seed of irritation and they'll magnify it into full-blown aggravation. Give them that aggravation back and they'll amplify it into rage. It's not personal, it's not conscious manipulation. It's how the feminine psyche processes and responds to emotional information. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Women needed to be exquisitely sensitive to emotional nuances because they were responsible for reading the emotional states of infants who couldn't verbally communicate their needs. A mother who could detect the slightest change in her baby's emotional state had children who survived. A mother who missed these subtle cues had children who didn't. This same sensitivity extends to their relationships with men. When you speak to a woman with even a trace of annoyance, contempt, or judgment in your voice, her nervous system picks up on that emotional frequency and amplifies it. She's not choosing to be dramatic. Her biology is designed to magnify emotional information. Think of it like an emotional echo chamber. If you shout into a canyon, the echo comes back louder and more distorted. If you whisper into the same canyon, you get a gentle whisper back. Women are like emotional canyons. They amplify and return whatever emotional energy you send their way. This is why the traditional masculine approach to conflict, getting firmer, more direct, more emotionally intense, backfires spectacularly with women. You're literally feeding the amplification system more negative energy to work with. The key insight is this. If women amplify and reflect your emotional state, then the quality of their response is largely determined by the quality of your input. Send warmth, get warmth back. Send irritation, get aggression back, send calm confidence, get receptivity back. Most men never figure this out because they're thinking in terms of logic and facts. They believe that if they're right about something, they should be able to express that rightness with whatever emotional tone feels natural to them. But with women, how you say something is often more important than what you say. The amplification principle reveals that women aren't inherently difficult. They're emotional mirrors reflecting back the energy you give them. Master your input and you control their output. Before we get into communication techniques, let's address the elephant in the room. Some women are literally impossible to have peaceful relationships with, and your first line of defense is learning to identify and avoid them. Here's a truth that's going to make some people uncomfortable. Not all women are relationship material. Some women are addicted to drama, incapable of emotional regulation, or so deeply damaged that they will create conflict no matter how perfectly you communicate. The harsh reality is that there are women out there who will interpret your kindness as weakness, your boundaries as aggression, and your attempts at peaceful resolution as opportunities to escalate. These women exist. They're more common than you might think, and no amount of perfect communication will fix them. This is why mate selection is actually the most important skill you can develop. Before you even worry about how to communicate with women, you need to get good at identifying which women are worth communicating with in the first place. Drama-addicted women reveal themselves early if you know what to look for. They're the ones who have crazy ex stories where they're always the victim. They're the ones who create unnecessary conflict in low-stakes situations. They're the ones who seem to thrive on emotional intensity and get bored during peaceful periods. These women will tell on themselves within the first few dates. They'll be rude to service workers. They'll have volatile relationships with their family and friends. They'll complain constantly about everyone else being toxic, while never examining their own behaviour. They'll test your boundaries in manipulative ways and reward drama while punishing stability. The mistake most men make is thinking they can fix these women with the right approach. They believe that if they just communicate perfectly enough, they can have a peaceful relationship with an inherently chaotic person. This is like trying to have a calm conversation with someone who's on fire. No matter how soothing your voice is, they're still burning. You cannot have a peaceful relationship with a woman who is fundamentally opposed to peace. You cannot have mature communication with a woman who finds maturity boring. You cannot avoid conflict with a woman who creates conflict for entertainment. The solution is to develop what I call early warning systems, ways to identify problematic women before you become emotionally invested. Watch how she treats people who can't benefit her. Notice how she talks about her past relationships. Pay attention to whether she takes responsibility for her role in conflicts, or always blames others. Dating should be an extended interview process, where you're evaluating her character, emotional stability, and conflict resolution skills. If she fails this interview, if she's argumentative, disrespectful, or drama-seeking in the early stages, you simply wish her well and move on. This requires developing what I call optionality, having enough dating options that you're not desperate to make things work with any particular woman. When you have multiple options, you can afford to be selective. When you're desperate, you'll rationalize red flags and end up in toxic relationships. The selection strategy reveals that the easiest way to never fight with a woman is to never get involved with women who love fighting. Your energy is better spent finding peaceful women than trying to make chaotic women peaceful. Here's where most men get confused. They think the solution is to become emotionless robots, but removing all emotion from your voice actually makes women more defensive, not less. Before we continue, if you're finding this exploration valuable, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Understanding these psychological patterns could transform your relationships, and sharing this knowledge helps us reach more men who need to hear it. Once you've selected a high-quality woman, the next challenge is learning to communicate with her in a way that bypasses her defensive mechanisms. This is where most men make a critical error. They swing too far in the opposite direction and remove all emotion from their communication. Here's what typically happens. A man learns that anger and irritation cause women to become defensive, so he decides to become completely flat and emotionless when addressing issues. He thinks this will come across as calm and rational. Instead, it comes across as cold and disconnected. When you remove all emotion from your voice, women can't feel you emotionally present with them. To a woman, this emotional absence feels like a threat to the relationship itself. Her nervous system interprets your emotional distance as potential abandonment, which triggers her insecurity and actually makes her more likely to escalate conflicts. This is because women bond through emotional connection. When you go completely flat, she can't sense your emotional investment in her or the relationship. She starts to panic on a subconscious level, thinking, "He doesn't care anymore, he's checking out, I'm losing him." In her anxiety, she often escalates the situation in a counterproductive attempt to get you to show emotion. Any emotion, because emotion signals investment to her. She'd rather have you angry and engaged than calm and disconnected. The solution is what I call tone mastery, learning to remove negative emotions from your voice while maintaining warmth and connection. Think of it like being a warm, loving father who needs to correct a child. You're not angry, you're not cold, but you're also not permissive. You're warm but firm, connected but boundaried. This requires developing what I call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between different types of emotional expression. You want to eliminate irritation, contempt, frustration, and judgment from your voice, while preserving warmth, care, affection, and investment. Practically, this means speaking to women the way you might speak to someone you genuinely care about who's made an innocent mistake. There's no harshness, no edge, no underlying criticism, just warm, gentle correction from someone who wants the best for them. The key is maintaining what I call undifferentiated warmth, a baseline emotional tone that communicates care, investment, and good intentions, regardless of what you're discussing. With this foundation, you can disagree, set boundaries, or even call out bad behavior without triggering her defensive responses. When you master this tone, something magical happens. Women actually start to enjoy being corrected by you. Instead of feeling attacked or criticized, they feel cared for and guided. They begin to see your feedback as coming from love rather than judgment. Tone mastery reveals that the goal isn't to become emotionless, it's to become selectively emotional. Remove the negative emotions that trigger defensiveness, while amplifying the positive emotions that create connection and cooperation. Men and women process conflict completely differently, and using masculine communication strategies with women is like speaking English to someone who only understands French. Understanding why traditional masculine communication fails with women requires understanding the fundamental difference between how men and women approach conflict resolution. When men have problems with other men, we typically remove emotion from the conversation to prevent escalation. We speak slowly, calmly, and rationally. We focus on facts, logic, and practical solutions. We see emotion as potentially dangerous, something that might turn a disagreement into a fight. This approach works well in male-to-male interactions because men generally trust that emotional distance means safety, not abandonment. When another man speaks to us in a flat, emotionless tone, we interpret it as professionalism or self-control, not rejection. But women experience this completely differently. When you speak to a woman in the same tone you'd use with a male colleague during a tense business meeting, she doesn't hear professionalism. She hears emotional withdrawal. She doesn't interpret your calm rationality as strength. She experiences it as disconnection. This is rooted in evolutionary psychology. For thousands of years, women's survival depended on maintaining emotional bonds with their mates. A man who became emotionally distant might be preparing to abandon her and their children, a potentially fatal scenario in ancestral environments. As a result, women developed exquisite sensitivity to signs of emotional withdrawal. When you go into business mode with a woman, speaking in that flat, rational tone that works so well with men, you're unknowingly triggering ancient fears about relationship stability. The feminine approach to conflict is fundamentally different. Women typically try to maintain emotional connection even during disagreements. They want to feel that you're still with them emotionally, even when you're opposed to them logically. This is why women often seem to care more about how you say something than what you actually say. From a feminine perspective, the emotional undertone of your communication carries more information about the relationship's safety than the logical content of your words. Understanding this difference is crucial because it explains why so many well-intentioned men fail with women. They apply masculine communication strategies that work brilliantly with other men but backfire spectacularly with women. The solution isn't to abandon logic or boundaries, it's to learn to communicate logic and boundaries in a way that maintains emotional connection. You can disagree with a woman while still making her feel emotionally safe with you. This requires what I call bilingual communication. the ability to speak both masculine logic and feminine emotion simultaneously. You maintain your logical position while wrapping it in emotional warmth and connection. The masculine-feminine dynamic reveals that communication isn't just about transferring information, it's about managing emotional states. Learn to speak both languages, and you can influence women in ways that purely logical men never can. Now that you understand the theory, let's get practical. Here are the specific techniques that allow you to disagree, correct, and set boundaries without creating resistance. Implementing these principles requires developing specific communication skills that most men never learn. Here's the practical framework I use to maintain peaceful relationships while still being able to address issues when they arise. First, the warmth sandwich technique. Whenever you need to address something problematic, you sandwich the correction between expressions of care and connection. You start with warmth, deliver the boundary or correction, then end with reassurance about the relationship. For example, instead of saying, "You're being disrespectful," you might say, "Hey babe, I love you, and I want us to work through this together. When you speak to me that way, it doesn't feel good, and I need us to find a better approach. We're a team, and I know we can figure this out." The correction is the same, but it's wrapped in emotional safety that prevents her defensive mechanisms from activating. Second, the curious observer approach. Instead of making accusations or judgments, you become genuinely curious about her perspective while gently pointing out the issue. "I'm noticing some tension here, and I'm curious about what's going on for you. Help me understand." This technique works because it positions you as an ally trying to understand rather than an adversary trying to win. Women respond much better to curiosity than to criticism. Third, the shared problem frame. Instead of making it you versus her, you make it both of you versus the problem. It seems like we have a communication challenge here. How do you think we could handle this differently next time? This prevents her from feeling attacked, and instead makes her feel like you're working together toward a solution. Fourth, the emotional validation technique. You acknowledge her emotional experience before addressing the behavioural issue. "I can see that you're really frustrated right now, and that makes sense. At the same time, I need us to find a way to work through this that feels good for both of us." This works because it meets her need to feel understood before asking her to change her behaviour. Fifth, the future focus method. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you immediately shift to how things could go better. What happened happened. What I'm more interested in is how we want to handle similar situations going forward. This prevents her from getting stuck in shame or defensiveness about past behaviour, and instead engages her in creating positive solutions. The key to all these techniques is maintaining the undifferentiated warmth we discussed earlier. Your tone should communicate that you're addressing the behaviour because you care about the relationship, not because you want to punish or control her. The practical framework reveals that you can address any issue with a woman as long as you do it in a way that maintains emotional safety and positions you as teammates rather than adversaries. Once you master the basics, you can actually use potential conflicts as opportunities to deepen your connection and increase her attraction to you. The most advanced practitioners of this approach don't just avoid conflict, they transform potential conflicts into bonding experiences that actually strengthen the relationship and increase attraction. This happens when you combine perfect tone management with what I call leadership through warmth. Instead of seeing her emotional reactions as problems to solve, you start seeing them as opportunities to demonstrate your emotional intelligence and leadership capacity. When a woman becomes emotional or reactive, instead of matching her energy or withdrawing from it, you become the calm, warm center that she can settle into. You don't take her emotions personally, you don't try to logic her out of them, and you don't get defensive about whatever triggered them. Instead, you might say something like, "I can see this is really important to you. Help me understand what you need right now." With genuine warmth and curiosity in your voice, not patronizing or condescending, but truly interested in her experience. This approach does something powerful. It makes her feel completely safe to have emotions around you. She learns that you won't punish her for feeling things, won't withdraw when she's upset, and won't make her emotions about you. This creates what psychologists call emotional safety, the foundation of deep attraction and bonding. When women feel emotionally safe with you, they become remarkably cooperative. They start to see you as their emotional refuge rather than their emotional threat. They begin to trust your judgment because they know it comes from care rather than control. This is when you develop what I call effortless influence, the ability to guide and lead without force or manipulation. Women naturally want to follow men who make them feel emotionally safe and understood. The advanced practitioner can address any behavioral issue while actually increasing attraction, because he's demonstrating high-level emotional intelligence and masculine leadership. He's showing that he can handle her emotions without being destabilized by them, which is incredibly attractive to women. This is the difference between controlling a woman's behavior through fear or manipulation and inspiring her cooperation through genuine leadership. Fear-based compliance is temporary and breeds resentment. Leadership-based cooperation is sustainable and actually increases her investment in the relationship. The ultimate goal isn't just to avoid fights, it's to create relationships where conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding and connection, where your ability to handle her emotions with grace and wisdom actually makes her more attracted to you, not less. Advanced strategies reveal that mastering female psychology isn't about controlling women, it's about becoming the kind of man that women naturally want to cooperate with, because being around you feels better than fighting with you. Understanding how to never fight with a woman reveals something fundamental about male-female dynamics. Most conflicts aren't about the surface issues you think you're arguing about. They're about deeper emotional needs for safety, connection, and understanding. The strategies I've shared today aren't about manipulation or control. They're about becoming a more emotionally intelligent man who understands how to meet women's emotional needs while still maintaining your boundaries and standards. When you can do this, you'll find that women become remarkably cooperative and peaceful to be around. For the men listening, this isn't about becoming a pushover or suppressing your masculine nature. It's about expressing your masculinity in a way that creates cooperation rather than resistance. Strong boundaries delivered with warmth are more effective than harsh boundaries delivered with anger. The key insight is that women respond more to your emotional state than your logical arguments. Master your emotional input, and you control their emotional output. Approach them with warmth and genuine care, even when addressing problems, and you'll find that conflicts simply stop happening. Remember, the goal isn't to win arguments with women, it's to create relationships where arguments become unnecessary, because you're both working toward the same goals with mutual respect and understanding. Your ability to remain calm, warm, and connected while addressing issues isn't just a relationship skill, it's a leadership skill that will serve you in every area of your life. What do you think? Have you experienced the amplification principle in your own relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this exploration helped you understand something new about male-female dynamics, please like and subscribe to support more content about the psychology of successful relationships.